Welcome to the Mad Men Happy Hour, the officially unofficial podcast for Mad Men on AMC. I'm Jim.
I'm Aaron.
And today we're talking about season 7, episode 12, entitled Lost Horizon. Not Last Horizon, although it may be Don's Last Horizon. I don't know. What do you think of this episode?
I liked it. It was it made me think a lot. It made me feel a lot. It was extremely uncomfortable, which I think was the point of watching it. Almost unbearably so, but I feel like they added just enough at the end with the organ and the roller derby and Peggy blowing the doors off of Eric's, what is it, McCann Erickson?
Yeah.
With the fisherman's wife's dream and the cigarette and the sunglasses that gave it a little bit of light to reduce to 11. What'd you think?
Yeah. So those moments that everybody's like all gung ho about, I'm a little like about.
Okay.
Like that Peggy thing, like she has one conversation with Roger and boom, she's a new person. Like I know she'll probably come back down out of the clouds at some point. And I get that that's kind of just her moment to think that she's amazing. And I mostly like it, but it felt a little like over the top and not quite earned during this episode. I don't know.
First of all, I would believe that a night on a bender with Roger could do that to a person. It's like when Rick handed Carl his sheriff's hat, just a massive swagger transfer.
Sure.
But I mean, you're not wrong, but I looked at it two ways because I had this similar thought. One is real life McCann Erickson, eventually someone like Peggy becomes a creative director and a executive officer of the company. Mm-hmm. So they have to get from there to here, from here to there. This might be the first step, especially Roger when he's like taken aback when she goes, "You got to make the men comfortable." He's like, "Who the hell told you that?" Which again, as a man, I'm not sure if that's sound advice or not.
Okay.
I don't know. But I was kind of surprised with McCann Erickson being a real life firm. Like this must be really uncomfortable for them.
Yeah, potentially. Sure.
I mean, I don't know how based in real life. We had the gentleman that wrote us in 2 weeks ago talking about being currently there at McCann Erickson. It sounds awesome, but and I feel like that they might have been like, "Woohoo, we're getting Mad Men love," and then this episode happens, and the Black Irish thuggery was on full display.
It's it's a different era. I'm sure like anything that comes up in Mad Men is not going to reflect on present day McCann in quite the same way.
I don't think people work that way.
Really?
I think you want
like
them...
you hear the same name and you're like, oh yeah, 50 years ago, it's basically the same today.
I don't know. I don't think you think that way. I do think there's a lot of people that do feel that way. And I don't know that it's going to cost them business or anything, but I think about how squeamish companies were for Breaking Bad to feature stuff in their restaurant at times, and then some were like catering. I feel like that they're an advertising company would be. I'm just saying that I feel like it might be uncomfortable for them when something like this drops.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't feel any ill will toward McCann current day, based off of some TV show made about them.
Sure, but it's just something. This is an idle thought I was wondering about, like what it's like on a Monday morning at McCann Erickson when.
Yeah. You
when Ferg and Hobarth come and
Sure. Okay. Who made this episode?
This was directed by Phil Abraham, who also directed last half season's The Strategy. That's the one where Bob proposed to Joan.
Yep.
And got shut down. And he's directed overall 15 episodes of Mad Men. So he's a familiar face. Also directed 2 episodes of Netflix's fantastic Daredevil.
Oh, cool.
Which I was interested to see, like totally radically different takes on subject matter. And he got his directorial debut directing an episode of The Sopranos, where he was credited as the DP for over 47 episodes. So clearly, that is the Wiener connection. Yeah, not in the Chicago style sense of the word, but in it was written by Simi Chelis and Matthew Weiner. Simi has co-written 2 episodes of season 5 of Mad Men with Matthew Weiner. Both of those episodes, Faraway Places and The Other Women, were nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Writing. And she actually won a WGA award for The Other Woman. And that's the one where Don got down on one knee and kissed Peggy's hand when he realized that she could not be talked out of leaving him for Teddy Chaga-ga-ga-ga at CGC, which that's a great episode. And I like it that I feel like that Matt Weiner is smart enough to bring in female writers to help him with stuff like this, because
It's a good idea.
what would this episode be like if it was written, directed, and conceived of a bunch of dudes, and older dudes at that?
Probably different.
Probably not.
And I imagine, like, I don't know. There's a lot of influence from a lot of different people
Sure.
here, and it shows.
But I think, just judging from the Facebook feed, what I've gotten through feedback, the forums, I feel like this episode did a really good job of showing what it's like to be this stuff. We talk a lot about, like, Pete being rapey and all that. What do we mean? Like, it's what you consider a coercive relationship.
Yeah.
Like, we'll talk about this as we go, but at what point should Joan have objected to Ferg's advances? At what point was it reasonable professionalism and him being kind and him being pervy and disgusting? And that's the problem, especially when you choose wrong and you fuck up your career.
Yeah.
So I think it did a great job to have people think about that. And also the fact that, we made a lot of progress in like the 45 years since, but a lot of that stuff goes down exactly the way it does today.
Sure.
So
yeah, and I'm sure as we go through this recap, we'll talk a lot more about it. Why don't we get into that?
I also have an exciting Gilmore Girls update.
Okay.
I mentioned my love for the show last episode, and I had a whole bunch of people recommend this podcast called Return to Stars Hollow. And then just this morning, one of the co-hosts reached out, listening to our podcast, and wanted me on to guest host a podcast about the Gilmore Girls, and I graciously accepted. I am so excited.
Wow.
So be on the lookout for that, because I will be pimping that with every ounce of ball move power.
Yep, I'm going to be right on that one. Sure.
Well, I also committed you to like a 5-episode run.
Oh yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, and they're like on episode. I think they're in episode season 3, so you've only got like 44 episodes to catch up on. No big deal.
Okay, sounds good. I'll do that tomorrow. All right, let's get into the recap. We start off with Don arriving at his new to us McCann office. It doesn't appear to be totally new to him, but it is relatively new. And Meredith gets him kind of settled in here for the day, updates him on the stuff he has to do and all that stuff. I don't know. I felt like Meredith had a bit of an attitude, which I liked in this scene.
I think that she heard us talking last week about who was the best secretary and was submitting. This was her Secretary Emmy Award nomination because she's just fantastic.
Yeah. What else can you ask from a secretary than to design your apartment for you? Like,
no, she's going.
That's more than a secretary should do.
She's going into like butler territory, like a personal
interior
servant
designer
in the best sense of the word. It's amazing the professional service that she's providing Don here.
Sure.
Keeping track of his social security cards, his ring, his cash. Did you think that envelope was kind of significant? The reminder of Don Draper's, or I guess Dick Whitman's artificiality and his.
Yeah, I think so. And that ring being in there, which we know is the one that both, most recently he got back from Megan.
Yep.
But it all kind of started when he got it from Anna Draper. That thing is significant to him. And seeing that at the beginning of an episode where he kind of takes off, goes his own way here, I think is significant.
I feel like Simi Chellis, the lady that co-wrote this, she wrote like 90% episode, and the Wiener just flew in to do some troll face.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of stuff in here where I feel like this is for everyone on Reddit and everyone on forums and everywhere that's theorizing about Don Draper's future, that he is winking and middle fingering all of us. And there's like 4 different occasions. This is the first one. Like, oh, look at this. Don Draper social security cards.
Sure.
Start up the spoiler engine, start up this theorizing engine.
And you might also read into what he does right after this, which is go up to that window, which is whistling. And kind of feel it, try to press it in, and see if you get the whistling to stop.
Yeah, or maybe just bust the window out and jump out into the. No, he's totally troll faced.
I have another take on that, but I'm going to save it until a later scene.
Okay. Okay.
One that I think is pretty interesting to consider. Anyway, we go to SC&P, and the office is being completely gutted while Roger and Harry kind of verbally spar. They talk about the computers and data management, Harry's hat size, which is getting ever larger, and how they're never going to be bunkmates.
Right.
Man, I don't know. I'd like to see these two guys go at it. It's
Right.
funny. Roger has no respect for him. Harry doesn't care.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Their interactions are really good.
It's also great since you get the idea of the scale of McCann, because you look at SCNP's operation with the computers, and it's just essentially Harry and maybe a data processor or two, and they've got like 20 people, and he says it's like mission control. And we found out Don is on the 19th floor and Roger's on the 26th floor, and Harry's on the 24th floor. So that implies that they've at least got 7 floors to SCNP's 2 and a Time Life building. They're just, like people have said, this is on a scale that none of these people have had experience with before and can scarcely imagine.
Yeah, no. And I don't think they even understand it at all. I mean, when Don walks into that meeting later and only half of the creative directors are there, but it's a full house.
Sure.
He's like, wow, okay.
And you talk about them dismantling. These people are animals. They're putting cigarettes on the floor.
Harry stamps the
They're
cigarette
taking
out.
upper deckers in the toilets.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Peggy's throwing. It's crazy.
It is. People have to move in here,
Like when you later see this office after turning the lights, it looks like a set from The Walking Dead. There's like wires ripped out of the ceiling, and it's crazy. It's crazy. I can't wait to see. I wonder what the next tenant thinks.
Yeah. There's also a moment here where Shirley comes up and gives Roger some news that she won't be going to McCann because she's found a new job, and she says, advertising is not a comfortable place for everyone.
And how?
Yeah.
And then
Roger seems to get the point.
Then she sasses herself right out the door, never to be seen again.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty awesome.
So McCann Erickson, not only sexist, but racist as well.
I think that's implied.
We can assume. Yeah.
I think that's implied, that if it's this hard for Joan and Peggy to get through it, my God, poor Shirley.
Yeah.
She doesn't have time for this shit.
No.
She can go sell people trips to Bermuda, which is everything that SCNP has always said it would be.
Kind of. Maybe she can sell Dawn on one. It kind of makes me wonder what Dawn is going to do.
It's a good question.
Did she move over? Did she leave? We haven't seen anything from her since the merger here.
And she was worried about the redundancy of her office manager. I doubt we see Dawn again. Yeah. I think I'm going to pin my dreams onto Shirley with her and say that she followed suit and got a job she's well qualified for at a company who doesn't have their head fully up their ass like McCann Erickson, and she's going to do fine.
All right. I think we've seen the last of Shirley. Yeah.
I do believe so.
She's gone. Most of the secretaries. I think the only ones we're really going to see are, Beverly is Joan's new secretary, and then Meredith.
Meredith. You got, it's not Marsha. What is it? Not who's Peggy's secretary?
I don't know.
And then Rogers.
I don't know her name.
I don't know either of those names. Yeah. I got it written down somewhere.
Caroline was
it?
Was the older lady's name? Yeah,
okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
do you think he would have? Did he offer to fire Caroline if it would keep Shirley?
Yeah, he said she hated, or he hated her anyway. So
wow. All right.
Anyway, a couple of female copywriters show up at Joan's new office in McCann, and they're looking to score some brownie points and kind of weasel their way in on who they think are Joan's clients, but in actuality, those are Peggy's clients. And
Avon is like Joan feels real ownership over that. Yeah, they're just in it, and the whole, as soon as they came in, I was like, because they're talking about their role as hawking feminine products. If it's in it, near it, or makes you think of it, we're on it. But then they talk about Peggy, and they're also like, I thought it was interesting how they're like openly like, I told you she'd be this way. And then offering Peggy their crumbs. Like, this is starting to feel like this is not going to be a hero's welcome for the ladies.
Yeah, but it gives Joan the glimpse of, I don't know, because I feel like there's a dual purpose here. Like, they want to get onto Joan's team because they're tired of the sexual harassment coming from their superiors, right? In this organization. I
don't know if I'm sure they're tired.
I'm
sure they're tired of it. And there's also the hint of the ladies club bitch session.
Yeah. So that's how I read it, which is part of the impetus for Joan to try this, not blackmail, but this threat of lawsuit on Jim Hobart when he doesn't want to help her out.
Sure. And he's like,
she knows that she'll probably have some help.
I would think so. Although they said we're not women's lib and we're not consciousness raising, anything like that. But you got to think that, yeah, there'd be a sympathetic ear there. And also, Jim saying, "Oh, our ladies love us." I don't buy a fucking word he says about anything female.
No, I mean, even like, no, absolutely not. He doesn't respect them. He doesn't care. He's terrible.
He might as well say our furniture loves us, because that's I think how he sees this.
And I think it goes farther. I think that Jim Hobart is resentful of a woman even being allowed into the workplace.
Seems like it
on any kind of respected level,
right?
Because the line he says later on when Joan's negotiating, he's like, "I'd rather give it to a lawyer."
Oh yeah,
that's a hateful line. That's not just your run of the mill.
It's essentially saying, "I'd rather set this money on fire and burn it than give it to you."
Exactly. Yeah,
and that's the crazy thing is, arguably, McCann Erickson is more sexist than Sterling Koo was back in 1960.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's hard to say because Sterling Koo was pretty damn sexist, but it was kind of breathtaking to see McCann Erickson this far into the Neolithic era.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's anybody good at McCann.
No.
Like there's no Don. There's no guy who's at least respectful.
Yeah, like he might do the wrong.
Doesn't look down on them.
He might do the wrong thing, but he has thought about the matter. And he's been the little guy. Like these, I don't know what these guys' backgrounds are, but these guys very clearly have never thought about the little guy or anybody in a one down position from them.
Yeah.
I mean, like even then it's like, that's so hilarious in retrospect, what it must be like for Ken to be fired by Ferg. Because everything that he said about this guy, like, okay, maybe there was some Irish racism thrown into it, but it does seem like every bit of what Ken was bitching about was justified.
Yeah.
This is a terrible place to work for if you have any kind of soul or conscience.
Yeah. And, that's part of what drives Dawn away in this episode.
Sure.
Anyway, Peggy shows up at SC&P with a box of her stuff because apparently her office is not ready over at McCann. And Ed, who isn't going to McCann, who's apparently been fired but working out the rest of the week, is relaxing in her office, but Peggy puts him to work instead.
Yeah, deputized as her secretary.
Yeah, I don't know.
With mixed results. No, they're not mixed. They're just all negative.
Yeah, he's taking this opportunity to just kick back and enjoy the week of pay with no work.
Why not?
Make some phone calls.
What are they going to do? Fire him?
I guess.
What are they going to do? Fire him?
Yeah, exactly. So Dawn gets the red carpet treatment from Ferg and Jim, like big time. They are all but down on their knees, sucking him off when they tell him that Miller Beer is coming in to meet people, and they say, "Hey, why don't you use our name? Why don't you use our name? Like right now in this room, why don't you use it with your name? Like very creepy.
Why we masturbate in the corner? Don't make eye contact with us. Don't make eye contact."
This scene just felt so desperate.
Yeah. And
they were just
it was also an interesting touch with the wiener doing a dramatic, heroic zoom in on Don when he said it.
That's the thing. I'm
like a low camera angle zoom in, the pull to zoom in as he's saying it. Like we are seeing this from Jim, who has chased Don Draper for these many years.
Oh yeah.
This is a season 1 plot come to roost. And he's just like, he's got this Fabergé egg and it's on his bookshelf. And it's like, it's complete.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with advertising in the 70s or whatever. I know McCann is a big name and they make a point of that on the show. I wonder if this is in any way supposed to be the audience's chance to go, aha, Don is at this great company now and they've got Don and he's amazing and look at the amazing things they're going to do together. If there's supposed to be a moment of like relishing the fact that Don is at McCann.
I think there's a little bit of that judo where
like if you know how amazing McCann was in that era, you might be getting goosebumps a little bit.
Yeah. And also it's like it's very much a hero's welcome that he gets from, the way the music is playing all jazzy, upbeat in the elevator. But also again, the scale, like we've seen Sterling Cooper and its various configurations of SCDP and SC&P scrape and scrap and fight for every client. This guy just buys a whole advertising firm in Milwaukee to get Miller. It's kind of amazing in retrospect that Roger and Bert and Don and Pete and the rest were able to steal Buick from these guys and to just like peel off stuff. I mean, it's really amazing. I mean, obviously guys like you know, it's like, oh, the poor guy from Avon is such a hilariously bad fit for this firm. But it's amazing that they're able to compete so well on top tier, you know, labels.
Yeah, no, I think so. And it's a lot of that is on Don's back, right? Like he's the guy and everybody knows it.
Sure.
We'll talk more about like Roger's role in this whole thing because I think that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Later on. Anyway, we go to Joan.
Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
What do you think about Ferg's imitation of Don?
Oh my God.
I feel like
he's not serious, right?
His impression is just a version of Richard Nixon. He does everyone as a version of Richard Nixon.
Probably. Yeah, what's your impression of Peggy?
Yeah, I'm not a copy secretary. I'm not a secretary. Yeah. I mean, get the fuck out of here. Office? And I do it better Nixon than this guy does, which is not saying much. They're the worst.
Absolute worst.
And Don makes a face at this guy like a Robert De Niro, like the fuck this guy talking about.
He's making that face the whole time.
And they're oblivious to it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, these guys.
Too blinded by their moment of triumph here. You know? They think they got everything they want.
Well, it's hard to see with your head up your ass. It's just all moist and black.
Indeed. Joan's on a call with Barry from Avon, and Dennis just completely ruins it. He hasn't read the brief. He invites a guy in a wheelchair to a round of golf. Joan calls him out on it, and he gets all sexist on her and walks out the door. You know, who told you were entitled to an opinion?
I thought you were going to be fun.
Jesus, man.
Yeah. Girl like you with Hooters. It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, yeah. He thought he'd go in there and charm her and have a good time and probably score and
she'd giggle and laugh and bat her eyes.
Just the idea that he would assume that walking into that room is, I don't know. Maybe he got the impression during their last meeting that since she didn't stand up and slap him across the face, which he so deserved, that maybe she was going to be okay, or at least play along with it.
No, that's the problem with sexism in general. It is a coercive, disgusting thing that if a woman rebels against, she's a bitch.
Sure.
She's a fucking bitch. She's got no sense of humor.
And, you know, I mean, she tries to do the thing she should do, which is go over this guy's head, call him out on his bullshit.
Work through the chain of command.
The problem is the whole fucking chain is rotten.
Right.
The whole thing, top to bottom.
Yeah.
And what do you do? And we were worried about this going into McCann. Last episode, we were like, Joan is really in a hard spot here. She's got a contract keeping her there.
Yeah, yeah.
She's going to have to give up something if she wants to get out of this environment. And that's probably what it's going to be like.
And I was worried, but I had no idea it was going to be this bad, honestly.
And so immediate, right? Like I thought, oh, maybe they'll give it an episode or two to really sit.
I thought it was going to be more than the benign neglect or like the patting on the head. Yeah. I didn't expect this active assault. I mean, I guess I expected it from this guy because we've seen,
but from everyone.
And how the hell is this guy an account man? Because like what he did, this Avon shit, and of course he'd be a member at Augusta, right?
Sure.
The at the time racist and still sexist organization. It boggles my mind that he could be this bad of an accounts man. But when you see the GM executives and the big, like I would think that the Coca-Cola guys are probably the same, like the big impenetrable institutions of advertising power, they probably all kind of carry along like this in this era.
Seems like it. Yeah. And he was very uninterested in anything that he considers the women's clients.
Right.
So maybe McCann traditionally doesn't deal with them. And that was part of why they brought them in, SC&P, because they wanted some new clients.
Right.
They're just not prepared to keep them.
Right. I thought the way we were going is that this guy was like, you know, fuck off, just do it yourself. And she's like, fine. And she would just build quietly her own empire but ironically doing the right thing, which was continue to put the grievances up the chain of command, just completely backfired into her face every single time she did it.
Yeah.
Getting progressively worse and worse. It's terrible.
Indeed. Peggy's new secretary drops by her house to tell her that McCann mistook her for a secretary.
It's Marcia.
Marcia?
Marcia, yeah.
Okay. And that she can go work in the writer's pool until her office is ready.
And also,
that's good.
You got flowers like all the other secretaries.
Yeah, that's the thing. So was the mix-up that they thought she was a secretary and so didn't prepare an office for her?
I think so. Yeah, that's the implication.
Not just the flowers. It's
right,
also
because they had a spot in in the bullpen,
yeah,
secretary bullpen, ready for her.
Yeah, so I like that.
And I also, it might have been intentional
It could have.
because
Let's just see if we can push her down the ranks a little and see if she fights back.
yeah, like I said, I've never been through a merger, but I have seen where like vice presidents from other companies come to work in a competitor, and there is a lot of mind games that are played, you know,
Yeah.
as far as assimilating them. It's like, oh, we'll roll out the red carpet for Don and for Pete and for Harry, but these people, you know, it'd just be this, it'd be all the same if they just quit. So let's do a couple of things that, again, what is Peggy going to say? Is she going to come up there and go full nuclear that they don't have her office ready and that they're disrespecting her as a sec? What does that get her? She looks like a bitch to all the secretaries. They can always say, hey, it's a harmless mistake. What the hell's wrong with this? You know, she's acting crazy. It's a no-win situation.
Yeah, it seems like several people are in a no-win situation here.
Yes.
Mostly females. Joan runs into Don in the elevator, and he makes her feel a little bit better about her day, you know, just by being your standard charming Don, and paying her a compliment, you know, giving her the respect that these McCann people are denying her.
Sure.
And she's like, what does she say exactly? Like, I'm going to take care of it. And he's like, I know you will.
I have no doubt. Yeah. And it's cute scene, and it's like vintage Don and Joan. And it's definitely, it seems like the axe has been buried between these two.
I think so. It makes it a lot easier when they come to this organization and he's the only guy who respects her there. Right. I mean, that's got to be part of
Pete,
it.
but sure. Yeah.
Sure. I guess Pete does. Yeah. Pete's not, you know, too bad this episode.
Can we go back to the other scene? Because there's this like little moment where Peggy's watching television at home, and we've often like done research on that and seen what the Weiner is trying to tell us. The Wiener rather is trying to tell us about the television show. I found out that this is a show called McCloud, which is about a Texas marshal. No, I'm sorry, just a federal marshal from New Mexico. So you got a little bit of Raylan Gibbons Justified vibe, who's taking a temporary assignment in New York City police, and his boss never takes him seriously, even though he's got this like keen analytic mind that like blows the cases wide open because they don't take him serious because of his background, and eventually he wins. This is like it's right from the IMDb description. It enables him to keep nabbing unsuspecting criminals despite his unbelieving boss. Is that a hint that Peggy is going to be able to come in here and conquer, despite everything stacked up against her?
Yeah.
She's going to be the marshal from, you know, New Mexico, kicking in the doors with her with her carpet munching octopus and rule this place.
It seems like it.
All right.
Especially when you say history shows us that there's going to be a female account executive who's very good at McCann, rises through the ranks. Yeah, that's totally Peggy.
All right.
So Joan, I don't know. Did you want to say anything else about this elevator scene?
No, not really. Except for everything felt a little. I mean, everything is nicey, but everything was also kind of half-hearted. Is not the right word, but kind of like, you know, if you run into an old friend from high school and you're like, hey, we should get together. Yeah, we should. But you don't really set a date, and you kind of both know that, like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. I felt like there was a little bit of that. Again, it's not quite fair to say it's bittersweet. I'm not sure exactly what that emotion is, but it's two non-romantic ships passing in the broad daylight. I don't know what the hell.
Okay.
Did you get any of that?
Not quite. I felt like this was, you know, a hint at their past and how they've always kind of danced around something between them. They've always, you know, just had this amazing chemistry, but it never happened. And when she invites him out to lunch here, he says soon. Probably never going to happen that we're going to see. So I kind of felt like it was that.
Also, the other thing about the kind of assholery of McCann Erickson is they very deliberately seem to split everyone from SC&P on different floors. Divide and conquer.
I guess so. Meredith comes into Don's office with a binder full of designs for his new apartment, and he picks one. And then she tells him he's having lunch with Miller Beer. And is roast beef okay? Sure, why not? It must be nice to have someone just, you know, designing your whole house for you.
Sure.
Like, here, point to a picture you like.
On the other hand,
that's what it will look like when you get there.
On the other hand, it is Meredith. And like,
you think she can't deliver?
I just wonder. I
Okay.
just wonder whether it's going to look like Sally's bedroom from his old apartment, the whole thing. Like, you know, like when Homer Simpson tried to build the barbecue and it's like, why doesn't this look like the picture? I just wonder. But on the other hand, she was a military brat, so she had a different house every year.
Yeah.
He's had, you know, hard-won practical experience, but point to the contrary, she's a dingbat. So
She is. I wonder if she's not like she's super detail oriented.
no,
like,
I mean,
that's the
she's
thing.
really soldiered up this episode.
Yeah.
I'm giving her full props for that. But I also think this is still Meredith, man. She is a little, she sees the world a little differently.
I think you're right about that. I just hope that doesn't leak into Don's apartment.
We got 2 episodes left. We've, you know,
okay.
we could have a full-on Don dump situation. Who knows?
Good. Joan asks Ferg to remove Dennis from the Avon account, and he promises to help. And Joan is pleased. You know, everything looks like it's going to be resolved here. You got Pete giving Joan a compliment.
She's like, how nice it is to be taken seriously.
Yeah. She went to the right person, right?
But I'm like, uh-oh, again. My
you know,
spidey
at this
sense
point, I was thinking
tingling.
maybe there's going to be some light at the end of the tunnel for Joan here.
I just, the whole time I was remembering everything Ken had said about these guys.
Yeah.
And I think, like, Ken used to be one of the worst of the douchebag, the office douches of the Harry Crane and all those guys. But he has his eyes have been open. He's been a man of enlightenment since he got married. And yeah, like I think he's a pretty good judge of what's scummy and what's not. And he was calling scumbag on this whole organization. So I was scared.
Sure. And, you know, he calls scumbag on Pete, too. And Pete seems to fit right in
That's
here.
right.
Pete's right at home. He's a vice president. He's loving it.
Yeah, it's true. Pete is really thriving here.
Yeah,
He's
it
a
makes you think about what kind of guy would thrive in that location. And that seems to be Pete.
I think, you know, somebody, maybe it was Sepinwall, said about Pete being a social chameleon, and he's definitely that. Like, Pete has multiple gears, and he's able to shift up and down to kind of meet who he's talking with, and that's kind of the key to his success. The only one he really couldn't hang with was the guys in Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
He's a Manhattanite, never driven a car. That's a tough one.
Yep.
But I wonder if Pete had gotten in with a group of good guys. And, you know, clearly, you know, say what you will about Roger and Don and all that, but they're not good guys in the way that I'm talking about. I wonder if he would have chameleoned himself into being a respectable person.
Interesting.
There's an alternate universe
so.
where a fresh-faced Pete Campbell shows up, is shown the ropes by a less damaged version of Don Draper, marries Allison Brie, and is a remarkably awesome human being.
I think so.
That is not that version. This is not that version.
No. Although, you know, for as disgusting as Pete is at most times, I don't think he would be down if they started being overtly racist or even overtly sexist. Like, I'm not sure that he understands what kind of organization he's in yet.
Sure.
He's just thriving because he's a good accounts man and they respect him because he's a man.
It would be interesting to see what he would do the first time someone made a racist joke, which might have been like 15 minutes on his first day. I would love to be there because we talked about that even this season. Shouting. That does seem like a genuine aspect of his character, that he just he cannot believe that there is still this feeling of hierarchies of human beings, and it bothers him.
Yeah, whereas I don't think it bothers Harry one bit.
No.
Harry's down on the 14th floor. There's all kinds of disgusting things going on down there. The least of which is the White Castle eating. So Peggy
mainframe runs on pure, just use shovel sliders in by the shovelful.
Do they have a computer at McCann?
He said it's like mission control, so I'm assuming they have.
Does he mean it like a people computer? Like, or is he talking about all?
Are we talking about something from Dune? Do they have a Mentat? No, I do not think they have a Mentat.
No, I mean, he talks about how many people are there. Like, that's the thing about a computer. When you have a computer, you don't need that many people, like collating stats and all this stuff.
Well,
it can do that for you. Like analyzing patterns in the stats, maybe.
Nah, I think that when he says mission control, what does mission control in the 60s look like? It's fucking Apollo 13, you know? It's Ed Harris in his white vest with blinky lights and tapes going reel to reel. And that's
duct taping hoses together.
There you go.
Trying to save the ship.
Anything to sell hose. If you got a duct tape.
Oh, those kind of hose. Okay.
if you got to duct tape that topaz together, then you do it. God damn it.
Yep.
This is our finest hour.
Anyway, Peggy arrives at SCNP, and Ed's on the phone. He's speaking Japanese. He's long distance calling people.
Was it Japanese for real? I thought it was Russian.
It sounds Japanese to me, but I don't know. Ed doesn't have the necessary accent to pull off either of those languages.
All right.
Anyway, he's prepared.
Esperanto.
Okay. He's talking to William Shatner. He's prepared a Dow ad that is firmly anti-war, and Peggy says, no, this isn't going to do it, and tells him to redo it, and he quits.
Which, as he should.
Yeah, I'm not going to work for Dow. I don't work here anymore.
I like Ed 20% more after this scene because Peggy is being a complete asshole. Like dumping a project on someone who it's its last. And this circumstances, you can't expect people to give a shit. You really can't.
Absolutely, but it shows it does a couple of things. It makes us like Ed a little bit more
because he's also very generous about it. He's not like, yeah, he didn't do the work, but he's not like a really dick. And then he's kind of genuine about.
It strikes me as something Stan would do. Yeah.
And Stan's a cool guy.
Yeah, if Stan were getting fired, of course he'd do an anti-war campaign.
Sure,
as a joke. But the other thing it also does is shows us how uptight Peggy is before this meeting with Roger.
It really is, yeah.
And that's a pattern we've seen in her, certainly. Sure. And that's part of the reason why I don't think a single conversation and drinking session with Roger would change you significantly for more than like a week to a day or a day to a week.
I don't know.
I can't imagine that Peggy is suddenly a different person. She didn't take LSD. She was just drinking vermouth. Come on.
Right. No, it's true. But we've seen her in this position where she's flying high, thinking she's going to have an assignment in Paris, and then she's in a hotel in Cleveland watching dogs hump. So we've seen her like the roller coaster ride that is Peggy Olson.
So you're saying she gets to the end of that hall, she turns the corner, and then
it's
runs right into Ferg.
Ferg humping Hobarth or whatever, sure.
No, Ferg humping Don probably.
Oh, well,
that's what he would want to do.
It's moving up in the world.
Anyway, I don't know. They make a couple of points in this episode where that the advertising game is kind of a mercenary type thing.
Sure.
I mean, Roger says it later on. Peggy here is basically saying it. The you switch companies, you switch loyalties on the drop of a hat, basically. And it's a tough thing for her to get her head around, really, because I feel like she is loyal to the people who are loyal to her. But that is few and far between in the advertising world.
Sure. And we kind of get an idea of why SCNP is special. That
they have a different set of values.
They do. And they're not, again, you can't really judge them by modern standards, but you see the sharp relief between them and McCann Erickson. And it's like, this is and they've not always done it for the right reasons. But they do kind of things that are mostly right.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, they had a couple of big female promotions, right? If we're talking about the sexism thing, I think that was almost completely absent in SCNP.
Right.
I think that was a much more tolerant, both racially and gender-wise environment.
And they embraced equal opportunity as far as employing different races, and it was kind of cynically. And the way it was implemented,
and that was partially Bert, right? He was the guy who really wasn't on board with that.
Sure.
I think obviously Pete was.
Bert might have actually been a slave owner.
He's probably old enough
in the 1840s. He had a plant. One of the Cooper family had a plantation in Georgia. It's possible. It's possible.
Probably, yeah. It's likely.
But, yeah.
Anyway, she does get a phone call from Stan here, who doesn't have a phone yet, but is trying to get a hold of her. And I thought that was a nice touch. It gives us an idea that maybe they're going to stay in touch across floors here. I assume they're not on the same floor, but I don't know why.
Who are we talking about?
She's higher up, Peggy and Stan. They have their little game of
did we find out that he's actually on a floor this episode?
Well, he's definitely got an office over there, yeah.
How did I miss that?
She calls. Well, Ed is sitting at the table and he's like, "Oh yeah, Stan called.
Oh,
he
that's
said
right.
He doesn't have a phone yet, but
that's right. Okay,
whatever.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So he's over there.
Okay.
Don arrives at the conference room for the Miller meeting, and it's stuffed full of creative directors, which is only half of the creative directors at McCann. And then a consultant delivers this very Don-like pitch on what is it?
It's a Miller Lite.
Oh yeah, the Miller. The diet beer.
The
That's
diet
what it
beer.
was. Yeah, the low calorie beer.
Tubs
Tubs,
beer.
as Don calls it. But Don just completely blanks out. He's staring out the window at a plane.
And the other thing is, yeah, we everyone says he's Don Drapering, but he's not as good as Don Draper. He laughed a little too hard at his own jokes. His face is a death mask. He doesn't have the soulful eyes that can make this man cannot make the carousel speech. No, he can't.
Probably not.
No, he cannot. There's no probably about it. And then again, Trollface Wiener shows up because Don sees the plane flying out the window, and I'm thinking immediately, I bet Jason over at the Nattercast is going crazy with his DB Cooper theory. It's even worse than I thought, because CJ Scott wrote in and says, as Don looks out the window, he sees a plane, goes to find Diane Bauer, DB, gets a visit from Cooper, and is now heading towards the Pacific Northwest. Holy crap. Yeah. DB Cooper, Don Draper.
Where's the connection? I'm not seeing it. No. yeah. There's a lot of shit in here, which is pointing in a direction.
He's jumping out of 727 tail in 2 episodes is all I'm saying.
Okay, let me give you an alternate take on this.
Sure.
Ferg in the first session with Don, where Hobart's calling him the white whale.
Is that what we're calling him now? Sessions?
Yeah. Well, that was a hump session. Yeah.
Okay.
He mentions this being a shirt sleeve operation. A shirt sleeve operation is an aeronautical term, which is basically saying that the inside of the cockpit is pressurized and enables you. It's a self-contained environment that enables you to not have to wear all the shit that they would have to wear when cockpits weren't like
if you're YouTube
pressurized
pilot,
and it wasn't freezing. Yeah,
goddamn spacesuit on. Yeah,
exactly. So when you combine that with like the whistling wind coming through the window in Don's office, I'm starting to think that this kind of shirt sleeve operation is not what he wants. He doesn't want to be isolated anymore. He sees all these people who are just like, it's very echo chambery, right? Like all these people with their same pins flipping the pages at the same times. Don is
all drinking Coca-Cola.
He's staring down the barrel of just being a cog in a wheel.
Yep.
And I don't feel like that is what Don wants. And so that kind of isolation seems to be what they're getting at here with this plane. He's seeing this plane go by, which is connected with the aviation term. And he's thinking there's something better out there. Let me go find it. And he's out. He's immediately out of the room. He just walks out.
And you can see the exact moment the spell is broken when he overhears the guy tell Teddy, "Oh, you're here to raise us up a notch too."
Same speech, yeah.
Fucking Teddy, the sheep is getting to raise the notch. Nah, fuck. Oh, there's this guy from Research, Don Dre. Nah, fuck this. I'm out.
And when you combine it with his speeches about, what do you want? What, you just want another big client? You just want to be the same as everybody else? No, I want more than that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is what Don's journey is about at the end of this
I still don't know where the hell this is all going, but the themes are definitely...
St. Paul, Minnesota is where it's going.
They're definitely laying the tracks. I just can't see where they're going.
Okay. I noticed, so there's a cut, right? There's a cut from Peggy in her office with Ed. And Ed is wearing this stripy shirt with these bright blue pants. And we cut to Don walking through the hallway toward the conference room. And there's some woman walking away from the camera who is dressed almost identically to Ed. Like if Ed were female, he would be dressed in, it's the exact same like blue skirt, but instead of jeans with like the same pockets and like the same stripy shirt. It's really weird.
Does she have
all the same colors?
Long or short hair?
At least shoulder length.
Maybe that's actually Ed. This is a bosom buddy situation. He decided to grow his hair out, and
he would have to get extensions. So he got extensions.
Go undercover at McCann Erickson for some reason unknown
to report to the New York Mets. I don't know why.
Okay.
Anyway, Joan gets a visit from Ferg.
That's the spinoff we need. Him and Tom Hanks doing bosom buddies.
All right, I like it.
At McCann Erickson.
We go to Joan and Ferg. He comes into her office, says, you're setting up expectations here that you can't do. Dennis cannot be expected to work for a woman. What would he tell his clients?
What do you tell his wife?
My God.
Why? He's got to take some woman seriously at work? How's he going to have the hand when he gets home?
He's got to go home to his kids. Yeah, that's not going to work. And that instead, he's going to personally take the hit and take Dennis' place on these accounts.
Sure.
And then she's kind of pleasantly surprised by that, you know? And if Ferg were a decent guy, maybe this would work out. But instead, he invites her to an Atlanta trip.
Sure.
He invites her to a lunch meeting, and he says he's just looking for a good time.
Yeah.
So wrong. I felt terrible watching this
And
scene.
then, like, if there wasn't coercive enough, at the end he gets up. He's like, "Hey, we can't lose these accounts. What would you do around here without them?"
Like
That's
threatening her job.
It's a total threat.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, this is a trick.
Mhm.
Because at what point would Joan be smart to put her foot down and say, "This is bullshit. You can't treat me this way"? Really, there's no point, because she would just get drummed out of the company. But
yeah.
everything taken in isolation seems perfectly reasonable. Yeah, I'll understand you. I'll respect you. We should go on to a trip. We should get to know each other. I just want to
Yeah.
have a good time.
I mean,
like,
that's the
even that
difference.
you could argue to an HR director is like, "Oh, she just took what I said. She's crazy.
Yeah, she's new. Of course, I want to get to know my account executive.
Joan's
Like,
emotional. You just, you can't. That's why it's disgusting and gross.
It's
And that's
somehow, in my opinion, more disgusting than what Dennis
Right.
did, because at least Dennis is overt and you can see his intentions immediately. And I
Right.
think you see Ferg's intentions
Right.
without a doubt, but he is more subtle and he's a little smoother about it, even though
Sure.
he's equally as gross. I'm
Yeah.
not saying there's anything redeeming
no.
about that, but he pulls it off a little bit better than Dennis.
That's why it's horse, because you imagine Joan trying to complain about this to some neutral
Yeah.
party, and she's like, "Well, this guy, he's, it's just like, well, what exactly did he say? We said he wanted to take a trip to Atlanta and
Get to know me.
and get to know me, and well, don't you want your supervisor?" I mean,
I know. It's more sinister than Dennis.
it
who's just-
really sucks to put a human being in this position. It
Yeah.
really does.
Sure. Don shows up at Castle Frankenstein, where he is going to pick up Sally, but she's left. She's a teenager. She's off doing her own thing. Betty doesn't really even have a say on it anymore.
Right.
And instead, he and Betty start talking about her schooling, and he gives her a little back rub and calls her Birdie as he walks out the door. Pretty touching scene here between Betty and Don. I feel like
Right.
Betty has grown so much
Right.
that she doesn't see this as an advance. She remembers fondly their time together in certain capacities.
Wow.
Um,
I had a totally different take on this. I think
What do you
Don,
think is happening?
I think Don was going to put a move on Birdie, and she shut him
Really?
down. Yeah. Yeah. Because they just wasn't it last season? They just had sex at camp.
Yeah, but
And
that
he's-
felt like the finality of it.
He's asking when the kids are going to be back. And
Mhm.
although Sally is actually was Sally at the home or not? Because if she
No,
was in,
she was not.
okay. Yeah. Then totally. He was trying to put the moves on her, and she shut him down in a very gentle way. I also thought it was interesting the literal Freudian imagery of her reading a book on Freud about the analysis of hysteria, which hysteria being the disease the doctors diagnose women with, which is basically women be crazy and they have
Yeah.
vaginas. And, there's like
Sure.
the history of that is like there was doctors that were treating women wildly successfully with vibrators for
Mhm.
hysteria.
Mhm.
I kind of think, again, the Wiener had a little bit of troll face, knowing a fan's reaction and how much we all hate Betty. And he's essentially holding up a mirror and being like, "You're part of the problem. No one takes Betty's problem seriously. And she's got some real issues." And I just thought that's one of the genius of this episode.
My hate on Betty has come down a lot since the Bobby episode last season.
Sure.
She's maturing, man. I hate to say it because I really loved to hate Betty for a very long time, but
Sure.
I think she's getting right.
No, I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon with you, because I don't know what I've seen to change your opinion, other than that she's interested in psychology. And
It's
she's
not
doing
what
all
we
that.
have seen, it's what we haven't seen, right? Like, we haven't seen her freak out. We haven't seen her abuse her children. We
Okay.
haven't seen her, the stuff with Glenn, I guess, is one thing we've seen where she kind of had a decent approach to it and was
Sure.
nice and was understanding. And
Right.
I felt like that did a lot to redeem her.
Okay.
I don't know. It may be misfounded, but my hate for Betty has come down a lot since last season.
All right. Betty hate watch.
Yeah, we'll see if they can turn it around by the end. Make me really hate her.
All right. I don't know. I don't know that we'll see her again.
Yeah, this might have been the final scene with her. With Don calling her Birdie, I think that's a fitting in.
But
for
you
their
didn't think at all
relationship.
that Dawn was at least doing a little exploration of whether she'd be down to clown.
You know, it crossed my mind the first time I saw it, and I guess I was trying to look the other direction because I don't want to see that again.
No,
but now that you mention it, yeah, maybe there was a little bit of that when he's rubbing her back and she kind of puts her hand on his hand and
Said
just that's enough. That
yeah.
in not so many words.
Yeah.
So
But,
yeah, I can see that.
No, it wasn't just any one thing. It was just everything together, making me think that.
Can I say that Dawn is way more smooth than Glenn?
Then who?
Than Glenn.
Oh, well, sure.
Yeah, like
Sure.
if they don't have all of that, like I think if Dawn had the history with Betty that Glenn has with her, he probably would have made that happen if he wanted to.
Let me blow your mind, though.
Oh boy.
From what we've seen of Dick Whitman was a less better looking version of Glenn. So all Glenn needs to do is go to Vietnam. His commanding officer needs to get blown up in a foxhole. He grabs the dog tags. 10 years later, you got Don Draper Jr.
There you go. There you go.
There you go.
And who's Roger? I think like maybe Pete would be Roger.
No. Pete's no. I don't think Pete.
Although Don's the one following in Roger's footsteps, so maybe Don would be Roger. And Glenn would
the
come
reason
back
Roger's Roger's because he's been good looking and rich and coddled his entire life.
Yeah.
It never occurs to him that he's wrong or anything. So
It's true.
that's the kind of like sunshine blown up your ass privilege that you can't buy or earn or anything. It just comes natural from a lifetime of validation and affirmation.
It doesn't feel like anybody else in the show really has that.
No,
Roger's kind of the only one.
He's bulletproof. Nothing sticks to him. Like he'll have a moment of crisis where he's on a couch and he's crying about doors and all that stuff, but then he blasts his mind with acid and he pounds a metric ton of hippie tail, and then he's back to normal, wheeling and dealing, selling companies, playing the organ.
Indeed, drinking vermouth. Speaking of the office, there, Peggy's working late, and she spills her coffee, and she goes to clean it up, and she's like, you know what? No. If Eric Rank put out cigarettes on the floor, I'm leaving my coffee.
Damn straight, Peggy.
It's showing her unbuttoned just a little bit.
And she's hilariously bad at homemaking.
Why do you say that?
Because she tried to make coffee in a mug on a bare burner. Like I was expecting the ceramic to just shatter and like put her eye out.
I didn't even notice that.
Then like I don't think, not only has she not taken a vacation, I don't know if she's turned on a stove since going to SCP. And that's not a sexist thing. No. I feel like every human being should be able to cook a goddamn meal for themselves. And if you can't, you should fix that right now. Go to YouTube. There's tons of awesome, this is how you make shit that you put in your face tutorials that you can bang out in 2 or 3 minutes, and then you'll be a more complete human being.
So do you think she just, we've definitely seen her working late, like every single day.
Yeah, no,
do you think she just eats takeout like every single day? Lunch, dinner, everything?
Yes. Her interpersonal skills that are not suitable for work have atrophied like a parasite. Like she has lost all of these vestigial organs, and she's outside of this environment she is not very fit to survive.
Okay. And then we see Don driving home, but instead he decides, I'm going to leave the state. I'm going to head towards Pennsylvania. Very short scene there. A couple of very short scenes.
I thought he might be heading to the Hershey factory.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
He just needs a Hershey bar real bad.
Something, or he's going to go pay another visit to the whorehouse or whatever. But that's the first thing I thought.
Okay. So Joan and Richard are laying in bed, and she starts, I think she starts to take out some of her anger on Richard a little bit. He's suggesting a vacation, suggesting places, and she's like, don't tell me where to go. I don't want to go anywhere. And so he asks what's wrong, and she tells him. And then he suggests that she leave, but she really wants this $500,000 that she's entitled to. And he lays out her options. You can either file a lawsuit or you can call a guy, which I'm still not sure if he actually knows a guy, but either way it works.
I don't know. I've seen The Godfather.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's some Goomba presence out in the
West Coast.
Sure. and in Hollywood. That could be a thing. Sure.
Yeah. I'd buy that maybe a guy who's, made his mark would have to call a guy a few times.
I mean, JFK famously has mob ties. This guy's all,
Yeah, he's tied up. But yeah, she definitely wants this 500K. We see the crux of the problem really being spelled out here.
Sure.
You know, she's got money that she needs to get
Yeah.
or wants to get.
Yeah.
But she's kind of being
It's
assaulted
owed to
at every
her.
side.
It's not. That's she earned it.
She did.
Now you can quibble about how she earned it and all that stuff, but she put in the work. Not just the quote unquote prostitution, but she put the sweat equity into this company.
Yeah.
And has been instrumental to its success these past 5 years, and she's earned a partnership.
So it sounds like they all got half their money up front, and they're playing out their contract for the other half.
Probably, yeah.
Because she definitely got some money at this point, because she was entitled to way more than 500,000 given her share. We know she specifically says, like Pete says, it would be 1.5 million for me, or no, he owns more than her, and it would be 1.5 million for her. So she got a big payout at the beginning.
Yeah,
but she wants the rest of it.
And that's the thing.
Makes sense.
She doesn't need this money in the like, you know, she doesn't need it to be financially and independently successful.
Yeah.
But it's hers, and it's not right for bullies to take it from her.
I agree. Don's driving, and he's looking pretty tired when Bert Cooper shows up in the passenger seat. And Don tells him, I'm going to Racine, Wisconsin.
I was scared to death, man. Don's like, you know, looking like he's getting punchy. He's, of course, never wearing a seatbelt. Then, you know, he shows up, and I'm like, oh, is this going to be another car accident type of thing that he happened with? What's that, the comedian's wife? Bonnie?
I don't remember.
I can't remember her name either.
No.
The Lutz Nuts guy, girl. Barrett. There it is.
Okay.
Her name is Barrett. Were you afraid that he was going to run off the road here?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when Bert shows up.
Bert is his co-pilot.
Yeah, I didn't look up this on the road book. I don't know if you have any information on that.
That's that famous Jack Kerouac.
Okay.
But I'm like Bert. I've never read it. I wanted to go sit down and watch the movie that the Twilight Girl starred in a while back, and I never got around to it. So I bet
that's the definitive version. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand the ref. I mean, it's kind of, I hear it mentioned a lot of, like, you know, Kurt Vonnegut, same breath as Kurt Vonnegut, and it's got a lot of, I guess it's got some kind of fantasy about being on Mars, because I read like a disconnected paragraph in a review that I read this morning. So, but yeah, I'm not going to pretend like I'm more well read than I am.
Okay.
So,
interesting connection with Mars, huh?
Maybe.
Bert Cooper is all about space, it seems.
Sure.
But
yeah, he's an astronaut.
Apparently so. Anyway, Peggy gets a call from her secretary on the payphone in the lobby at SCNP.
Oh, that also is the scene that gives us a clue where we're at in the scheme of time. Not only has Don passed a 30-day window for his house, and he's been in a hotel for some period of time, but they're talking about this is the end of the summer and it's back to school sale. So you're thinking we're in the middle of August. We've jumped forward over a month, maybe 45 days.
That was the line from Meredith that really got me thinking. She's got a little bit of an attitude, you know, where she's saying like, "Oh, I'll get you out of the hellhole that is the Plaza." Like, it's a fucking awesome hotel.
Sure.
Don's complaining about being in there, and Meredith is like, "You know, I would love to fucking stay there." You're complaining about the height of luxury. Get out of here.
I think she was sincere, because that's how she works. Yeah. I don't think. You think?
I thought she had a little bit of an attitude. Yeah.
I don't think sarcasm is part of her processing.
She doesn't understand sarcasm.
No, she doesn't.
Okay.
Although, then the way she does, maybe that's just the armor she wears. You know, like Peggy, her early armor was just being like her bangs and her just dowdy look. And Jones was her sex appeal. And maybe Meredith is just, I wear my armor as a dingbat, because you see Jim Hobarth storming through her office and make all these demands, and she's like, ah. And then as soon as she leaves, her face falls, and like there's a little look of intelligence there. You know, I don't. Maybe I've misread her this whole time.
Could be. So yeah, on this phone call, Peggy's secretary, I guess Marcia, says that her office is ready. And when Peggy goes back to her office, she hears some spooky music, and she follows it and finds Roger playing an organ. Okay. Yeah. Why not? Why not? Roger's sitting alone in the ship playing an organ. I like it.
He's not going to show up to work yet.
No. And there's more reminders of like Roger's heart condition.
Yeah.
You think the Wiener's trolling us again there?
I think so. I don't think Roger's going to die before the end of the series. Although there's just so much gold in here. Like he's bitching that his bar wasn't considered a personal effect. And he searched Don's office and he only found lighter fluid, but I'm not there yet.
But would you drink vermouth? Yes, I'm afraid
I would.
I love that, man.
And also the light sexism of him like, hey, sweetheart, here's some money. Go fetch me a bottle of whatever.
I didn't read that as sexism. I read that as like everyone is beneath Roger, right? Like no one has anything more important than me to do here. Just go get my liquor for me.
But it's like, you know, I'm not afraid to say
it's more like a classist thing.
This is the man who did blackface like 5 seasons ago. He's got problems.
Okay, I won't deny that. It just, I don't know. And the fact that they haven't like interacted very much. Yeah, I mean, they have interacted a couple times, but not.
And it was always in the context of, I'm going to give you a bunch of money for you to run a menial task for me. But to be fair, I think he would treat Ed the exact same way. He wouldn't. I don't know if he would call him sweetheart. That's where the,
Sure, I'm with you. Joan then gets some chocolates from Ferg and finds the note and crumples it up. Jim goes to Don's office to tell him that he's missed a couple of meetings. He's not there, and this is the scene where Meredith covers for him and looks a little concerned. You know, she hasn't heard from Don either. And then we see Don stopping along the road to pee, presumably. And these are all just like super short scenes, so I'm skipping them. Roger amuses himself, by giving Peggy the octopus porn. I really feel like
now I've given you something. You got to stay.
Yeah. Like, look, let me show you my hospitality with this octopus porn. She is not excited about humoring this virtual stranger, you know, who just wants to drink and unpack his regrets on her.
Are you somewhat amazed they showed a close-up of the fisherman, the dream of the fisherman's wife?
Why? Because she's naked?
It's not just, okay, fuck you, man. It's not just she's naked. She's got a octopus.
It's
going to town on her lady bits.
It is quote unquote art. I think that's why they get away with it.
I love it.
Like, you can show the Venus de Milo.
This thing was on at 10 p.m. at night. I feel like in a television show, maybe not, you know, aerial television, whatever, but you should be able to show whatever the hell you want. I'm kind of a libertine and all that. I don't give a crap. I was just really surprised HBO of the you're allowed 1 fucks per season, and they got to be has so far let Mad Men get away. Is it 2 or 3? Has our fuck count swollen to 3 now?
I think so.
And I've seen a cephalopod giving cunnilingus to a Japanese woman and a 150-year-old print in high def. That was surprising to me.
Okay.
In high def, I'm doing my walking impression all of a sudden. What the hell?
In high def.
A lady in high def. Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, she tolerates it momentarily until she gets drunk, and then she decides, I'm just going to stick around. Because, you know, Roger makes a good point, right? You're going to roll into work on your first day at 4 p.m. drunk.
Yeah.
Not a good impression.
Right. But that's the thing. Like, he
did it on purpose.
Yeah. Like, if she had any time she would say it's appropriate to leave before it's time for him, he would have a great way to shut her down.
He would just pour another and say 1 for the road.
Yeah, sure.
Like, just stay a couple minutes longer, and then, because it sounded like, you know, this is what the 1 for the road. He had already said 1 for the road before that.
Sure. And also, I think Peggy didn't want to go over to McCann's either, because she seemed to have a massive attitude about the whole thing, and it didn't take much convincing for her to decide that, you know what, fuck them, you're right.
Yeah, she doesn't have any furniture. She has an office, but a draft table.
Draft table?
Come on.
Like a draftsman?
Like Stan?
She's a copy manager, for God's sake.
Yeah. So Don shows up at the Bauer residence and pretends that Diana has won a new refrigerator, and he gets invited inside by Diana's ex-husband's new wife to wait for her husband to get home.
Don Draper impersonating yet another person is, again, another example of Wiener troll face, right?
Yeah, seems like it. Especially when you put that social security card tucked into the envelope at the beginning. So when he's inside, he spies Diana's daughter, who he talks to. She wants the fridge.
Yeah.
Feels like she wants to get something out of her horrible mother. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to see the parallels between Diane and Don. I kind of think I wasn't a big fan of Diane character, but I like the way they're using her now. What's a commentary on Don,
his behavior,
Yeah. That he's a human tornado causing all this human wreckage. And, you know, there. But I mean, imagine if he had gone off with Rachel Menken, we could see Sally saying something very similar about Don, like,
Yeah.
I didn't get anything from my father. I should at least get a refrigerator full of beer. God damn it.
Yeah, and
It's there, but for the grace of whatever, go Don.
It's extra poignant because he goes to Betty's house and he wants to connect with his children in that moment, but they've moved beyond him. They don't need him anymore.
Mhm.
Sally's old enough to where she's going to go do her own thing, as evidence with they're going out with their friend. Bobby's off playing sports and living his life. It's like, we don't actually need you, Don.
Yeah,
You've been absent for so long that it's not required anymore.
That's sad enough and hard enough a transition process if you've been a good parent. I imagine it really stings if you know you've got sins to answer for.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I like their house. Not Castle Frankenstein, this Craftsman house that they've got going here. I like the house. I hate the couch. The couch, it reminds me of my grandparents' couch. Those are some ugly couches, man.
Did you think before we move on, I just want to talk about this now. Were we supposed to understand that maybe Diane got to be a little bit the way she is because her ex-husband is kind of a dick? Because on the one hand, he's talking about like, you got to find Jesus and all this kind of stuff that I imagine if you have just lost your daughter to some random sickness, that's not the best. I've always thought that was a weird thing that people take comfort that God, needed a new flower in his garden and need another angel in his chorus. I'm like, I would hate to be told, even as a believer, I would hate to be told that about a child of mine. And then this guy's turning into looks like a Jesus freak, and then he's kind of like a dick to his wife. But then someone reminded me that Don had a very similar reaction to Betty when she invited a air conditioner salesman into her house.
That's exactly what I was thinking. This whole scene.
It's like that's further social commentary that like we understand it. Like maybe this guy is like, hey, let me talk and being a dick, but that's kind of how everyone rolled.
Yeah, that's it. Strikes me as a very 50s mentality. The propriety of it, of inviting a stranger into your home when your husband is out, was just unacceptable.
Yeah, my wife's a dupe. She couldn't possibly know better. She's like a child.
That's how they viewed it. It's
okay.
It's certainly sexist, but it's of the time, and I was totally thinking about Don in that scene.
Okay,
his interaction with Betty. Anyway, Joan goes to see Jim about the sexism at McCann, Jim Hobart, and he refuses to help. And not only does he refuse to help, but he threatens her, and she pushes back with a threat of a lawsuit. And it kind of works, but kind of not. He agrees to give her half of the money that she's entitled to, and Joan says, no, I refuse to negotiate on that. And he kicks her out of his office.
Do you realize how tough Joan was being here?
Yeah.
Like to go up to this powerful man and to take him on and lock horns with him, and she didn't cry. She looked straight into his eyes. It's heroic.
It is. Yeah, she puts up a hell of a fight here.
She sure does.
And like I said, it partially works. I know it's not everything she wanted. Like I'm somewhat dissatisfied that she ends up taking it.
Well, I think we're supposed to be. And it's not a done deal yet. Like I don't think that this is Joan's finale.
You don't think her walking out the door is literally the last time we're going to see her?
I don't. But you know what? I would have said the same thing about Sal.
Okay.
Who I thought was a very pivotal character in the early seasons.
And then he's fired and boom.
Then he's gone and making a phone call from a booth in Central Park. And that's the last. I never thought that we'd never see him again. And now it seems like that's happening. So
we only have 2 episodes left.
And you've still
Don kind of gets a goodbye with Joan in this episode.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if maybe that's not the last we see of Joan.
And really, for 2 hours of television, there's so much ground they need to cover with Don and Peggy.
Yeah.
You don't think this serves as Peggy's finale, do you?
Man, that's an iconic way for her to go out, isn't it?
It sure is. But then you got 2 hours of Mad Men that are not going to I mean, this has been... Mad Men's arguably been about, if it's been about anything, the story of Don Draper and Peggy has kind of parallel, almost co-starring roles. Yeah. So it'd be weird for her not to be in the final 2 episodes at all.
I think you're right. I at least want to see if this adjustment of her attitude holds for part of one more episode. I think, in the finale, they can deal totally with Don. I'm probably okay with that. But another question is, do you think we'll see Roger again? Because Roger kind of has his farewell to SCNP here.
Sure.
He comes in, doesn't get set up for anything new, right?
I would always accept more Roger.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I guess I'm not going to expect it because you're right. This does kind of work it was pretty Roger heavy.
Mhm.
And I think that, yeah, sure.
And he explained, how he viewed SCNP and how he kind of viewed himself and his career. And I think it would be fitting for this to be the end of Roger.
Okay.
I'd rather not see him die. I'd rather envision a future where Roger, continues to pound hippies for the next 20 years
Sure.
and, smoke crack or whatever he's going to do.
Marry Anna Nicole Smith.
All right. Why not? Yeah. But I think it could be
when he's 90 something. Sure.
finale for
Yeah.
Roger.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. We'll talk about this more at the end with Joan. So, I fucking Jim Hobart, man. A couple lines in here that just really irked me is when he's talking about I don't know how you got your share, your partnership share, your stake.
Your little
someone
stake.
left it to you in a will.
Your little stake.
It means nothing here. And like at the end when he says that I'd rather give it to a lawyer, that's not just mildly sexist. That's hateful.
And it's also just so threatening. Like, if you make waves here, all the women here love it. Us, you'll be all alone.
Yeah.
And like, no one will listen to your story. I mean, this script is what an abuser or a person in power uses over the week. And it's the same fucking script regardless of whether it's sexism. It's always, I'm too powerful. No one will believe. Even if you told someone, they're not going to believe you, and you're going to be all alone, and you're going to be in a worse situation than if you just submit.
Yeah, I mean, but these sit-ins at the magazines that she's talking about are a perfect example of why this guy might be a little delusional as to his ultimate power.
Yeah, I did a little bit of digging, and I guess the Ladies' Home Journal was a coup over the fact that it's Ladies' Home Journal, and there wasn't a single woman in any of the upper echelons of management.
Yeah.
So yeah,
they did this sit-in, and they got, it happened years later that a woman was promoted, but during the time there was like an 8-page spread or something with all women authors.
Yeah, they did they threw him a bone by letting them kind of do like
the
women are taking over the editorial department. Woo,
Yeah, it just seems like a way to quash the problem at the moment.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Anyway, so Cliff gets home, who is Diana's ex-husband, and Don claims to be a collection agent when his ruse as a Westinghouse guy fails. And he tells him that Diana's in New York, and that's all he knows.
Yeah.
And then Don goes to leave. Cliff follows him out and says Diana's a train wreck. He should look to God for help, all this sort of stuff. Kind of, counseling him on his own life, which I thought was a little audacious.
Sure.
But apparently there's been like a train of dudes coming to his house.
That was the
reminding him of this event.
That was the one sour note in this episode. Really?
You didn't
There's been tons of dudes tracked her down to her house where that seemed not right to me.
Yeah, to get so invested in a woman so broken that you want to go chase after her doesn't seem like a thing.
And go to her ex-husband's home to do. Yeah, it is. I mean,
just Westinghouse every week. His wife thinks she's won a refrigerator.
Yeah, no, I mean, like if she was a high school sweetheart and you were trying to look her up later and you found that she used to be married, like maybe, and you didn't, maybe, but like, do you think you're the first? It's like, I don't know. Like, there's a train of I buy the whole human train wreck, and she just destroys people's lives, and this is commentary on Don too, because. Think about, if you go to the Women of Don Draper, Tumblr.com, and you look at all those women and you think about how they viewed their experience with Don, how many of them saw that as a positive experience? Not a lot of them.
No.
I bet a lot of women feel used and thrown away and lied to and hurt.
Probably so.
So, no, it was a great, I guess the Wiener got impatient with people getting to his social message, and he was just really making it emphatically in this episode that, and like I got an email from a person saying she doesn't like us referring to Don as a bad person. And he's not an evil person, but he is a flawed person that is a very, I believe a guy like this could exist in this time frame. And I don't think we're supposed to lionize him. I don't think we're supposed to demonize him. We're supposed to just look at him and I don't know.
Yeah,
Ozymandias him.
okay. I don't. Yeah,
Look
I
at
mean,
the ruin
it's-
of the man.
It's of the era,
and Marvel.
and for the era, I suppose he's no Jim Hobart, he's no Ferg Donnelly.
Sure, he's not even a Roger.
Yeah, for the most part, he's not even a Roger. But I don't know. Maybe he's an okay guy for the time. By today's modern standards, I think he's got a lot more problems.
Sure.
But anyway, Roger is playing the organ while Peggy roller skates around the office.
Brilliant.
Just a quick scene here. Yeah, I like
Brilliant.
it. And then Don's driving in the dark again. He's just heading off in nowhere. Roger shows up in Jim's office, and Hobart's complaining about nobody working, not being able to find Don. I thought this was funny that there was basically a de facto mutiny here.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, is anybody going to do any work around here?
Right.
Is
And
this
it
the
wasn't
con of
even a
the century?
coordinated thing. It was
Mm-mm.
just independent chaos. And
I love it.
the temerity of Jim Hobart saying that you sold me a rotten apple. Oh, just irony meter off the charts.
Yeah.
This is a bushel of bad apples, asshole.
It says something that, the social chameleon of Peter Campbell and the I've given up of Teddy Chaw
Sure.
are the only two guys who are serving any purpose
And
in
Harry
this organization.
And the White Castle,
Oh, yeah.
the sack of White Castles that is Harry.
He is.
Yeah, you
He
can't
truly
leave him
is.
out.
Those are the only guys that are doing anything here. And
Sure.
the rest of the people are too I don't know, free-spirited, they're just not on the same page as McCann.
They're not a conformist. They don't want to do
Yeah.
things the McCann Erickson way.
Non-conformist, sure. That's a good word for it.
And Don is that's the thing. What are the odds that Don comes back on the sojourn from Racine and to parts out west with the perfect Miller Lite ad?
If this weren't the end of the series, I would say they're really, really high.
I mean, right? Like, if it wasn't in the series,
really
I'm thinking
good
he's going to
odds.
talk to this hippie, and he's going to be like, "We shouldn't be appealing to the guy on a tractor because he's not the guy riding a goddamn lawn tractor likes his dogs because they don't talk back. Is not going to drink light beer, you shithead.
Yeah,
it's going to be some dude like this. I could just see it happening, but it seems like that's kind of
it's too late.
It's too late. It wouldn't surprise me, but no, I feel like it's kind of like we're maybe to expect that.
Man, that would almost be the saddest ending for Don if he just goes back and has this great pitch and becomes part of McCann.
Although what little I know of Jack Kerouac's On the Road this might just be a literal homage to the setup of that story. Take these guys taking a road trip.
Okay.
So I don't know enough to say if that's a connection or not, but I know just enough to know that that is in the air. So
yeah, Don is very lost at this point, right? He has, like we were talking about in previous episodes, he has no apartment, he has no life, he has no wife, he has no family. Everything has moved past him. Now, can he move past that? He's out there, and I feel like he's actively searching for the first time. He's always felt dissatisfied, but he's never gone looking like Roger has with his LSD trips and all this stuff.
Sure.
Roger found what makes him happy, I think.
Yep.
I wonder if Don will. Somewhere in St. Paul.
We'll see.
So Peggy strolls into her first day of work with a box of her stuff, some octopus porn, a cigarette, and sunglasses. It's an amazing shot.
It really is.
I just felt like it was a little over the top.
Maybe.
A tiny bit. But I was kind of cheering a little bit during this scene.
Yeah. No, I don't know what to even call it. It's not a hero's welcome. It's
just so cool, man.
It is cool. It is very cool. It's effortlessly cool.
It is in the way that Roger is effortlessly.
There's a
cool.
million versions of this in a GIF form floating around the internet now.
Oh yeah.
Might make it the article image for the podcast.
Sounds good.
I haven't done that since the finale of True Blood, so
All right.
got August company there in the Bald Move annals.
Then Joan gets to her office where Roger's waiting to talk about her situation with Jim Hobart, and he advises her to take the $250,000 that Hobart offered. She agrees, and she walks out of McCann. Says it's a deal.
And that's the thing. Like, even her ally is essentially covering for this institutional sexism.
This is a very like I'm conflicted. I'm all sorts of conflicted
I
about
know.
this
I
scene.
think you're supposed to be.
You are.
You're supposed to feel like a woman in that position in the 70s.
Yeah, I feel
or just a woman in that position. Because again,
I feel bad for Joan. I feel bad for even Roger in this scene because, you know, Roger's talking about this ship and how it was something great and something different. And he just basically sold it out from under everybody.
Sure.
He did it to save Dawn, and Joan's paying the price here. And I think that cuts Roger a little bit, you know? He's always had a thing for Joan. Dawn has always been his best friend. So by saving one of them, he sold the other out. It's a double-edged sword there.
And, you know, it's as far as Joan and whether she made the right decision or wrong decision, it's never a rational decision to stand up to any kind of institutional injustice. It never is. It's always somewhat foolish.
Irrational. Okay.
It's always very brave. It's always at a huge personal risk because you are bucking the system that's presumed to be correct. And
chances are it's going to come down on you hard.
It's like someone is going to be the one that you're essentially betting that you're going to be the one like that's going to climb out of the pit successfully, Batman Rises style, the Dark Knight Rises style. The first person that tries is probably going to get their body shattered on the rock walls. So it is not smart. It's not a rational thing. But thank God there's people that do it, or we wouldn't get anywhere. Like you have to have someone like Joan willing to risk $500,000 in 1970s cash to make a run at this monster.
Yeah, I'm like that's another part where I'm conflicted. Do I think that Joan should have taken the money? I think it's easier for her to take the money.
Yes, of course.
I don't know. I'm trying to think back like to how staunch of a person Joan is when it comes to like feminism and stuff. Certainly, I think less than Peggy. She plays to it more. If this was Peggy, I would be saying she should have fought to the death for this thing.
Sure.
I don't know what that says about me, but with Joan, I feel like maybe she made the right decision. You know, but I'm very conflicted about it.
I mean, that's the thing.
I'm very conflicted.
Did she make the right decision for herself? Did she make the right decision for her family?
That's the thing. I want to see her succeed, right?
Did she make the right decision for women everywhere? And is it fucked up that she has got that weight on her shoulders?
She made the wrong decision for that. I think. But ultimately what I want for Joan is I want her to succeed. She succeeds potentially here by taking a portion of the money.
Right.
She could succeed on the other side. It's a much harder fight and it's not guaranteed, whereas this money is, and the life that she wants might be flushed away by taking this money. You know, if she's ambitious to the point where she wants to make her career what she wants it to be, this is a step backward. And that's where I feel like it's a failure for her to just take this money and walk.
Here's the problem is that her career, the way I'm reading it, is over. She had this thing with SCD&P where she was able to work her way in and up this ladder where she goes to another ad agency and they're not going to take her seriously. The other alternative that I think is super exciting is what if you had is she a Harris now or is she Holloway? What if you had like a let's go with Harris? I think it's Joan. I think it's Harris. What if she took her $250,000 along with the $1 million she already had, and she takes Avon as her anchor client and opens up a Harris Olsen advertising agency, catering exclusively to women's products.
Would they even get along, man? I can't imagine. Like,
I think at the end of the day, my analysis
Peggy would
respect each other, and you don't need the like. I've seen this, and you don't need to like. It's a bonus if you like each other, but as long as you respect each other, it will probably work.
I don't know if they totally respect each other. Like that conversation they had in the elevator a couple of episodes ago after the first meeting with McCann.
Yeah.
Peggy doesn't seem to respect Joan at all.
But that's like asking, you know, like they just essentially both got punched in the face and then shoved in a metal box.
How do you feel about it?
Yes, the claws might come out a little bit. Like when people get under stress, they do crazy things. So I don't, I mean, I'm just saying like in balance, I feel like they have they're very different people that have achieved similar results in a field that's stacked against them, and that is the basis of their respect.
Okay.
They
I
still
can buy that.
probably would critique how the other does their thing, but
yeah, I mean, I wonder if Joan is going to go into a lifestyle similar to Richard with him, you know, just be kind of, you know, freewheeling, go around, travel, do your thing.
well, that's the thing.
Whatever.
That's the danger I feel in the last podcast is, will their relationship work when they're no longer equals?
Okay.
Because it felt like that the part of the attraction and the way that worked is that they both had their own agenda. They both have,
Yeah.
If he's retired and he's got his I guess she could retire too.
Sure.
But, and then they
He
would
doesn't
kind
seem
of,
to be.
that's the thing
quite
for
retired,
for a
though.
retired guy, he's doing an awful lot of stuff.
He is. He's in the office. He's making phone calls. Yeah.
So I just wonder if, you know, and certainly when she starts complaining or when whatever his first instinct was, well, I need to take you a trip or I need to sweep off feet. I don't know. That's what, well, I know it's not what Joan wants because she said as much. So
Yeah.
there is a little bit of a problem with that, might screw up her happy ending with Richard if losing this job, or especially if she, you know, is she going to lose his respect if she kind of rolls over, quote unquote, rolls over and takes this deal instead of fighting?
Yeah.
Would he admire her more if she got a guy? I don't know.
One of the suggestions was not to take the money and run
Right.
from Richard.
No, it's interesting,
suppose,
and it's also interesting just from a what does Joan think of this, because I feel like a lot of this has got to be flying around in her mind too.
Definitely. I suppose it's not impossible that Joan takes this buyout and then goes and starts her own agency, takes Avon, takes the shoe company.
No, I think that would be cool. I think that'd be cool because, yeah, I don't know. You got the Peggy as a McCann Erickson potential executive, but you also got
I don't think Peggy's going with her.
this Peggy blowing in there and getting summarily dismissed the next episode. And then
no smoking in the office, Peggy.
Yeah,
You're out.
Yeah.
Anyway, Don's still driving in the morning and he picks up a hitchhiker who is headed to St. Paul. It's a very short scene there. He seems to be headed nowhere. You know, he's just going where the breeze takes him at this point.
And then they start into ground control to Major Tom, and they came in at the end of the bridge where there's that particular section of string. It's all like minor notes, and it's almost like a thriller or a horror theme, which I thought was the final troll face moment, because there's people like, oh, Don's going to get murdered by the hobo.
Killer. Yeah.
And he puts that in right before it gets into, you know, the chorus of, or whatever the hell you call
Space
that.
Oddity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice touch, and it ties in the scary music from the organ and all that stuff.
Yeah, there's so that's the end of the episode. I guess we could play the name game a little bit. I think Don has definitely lost the horizon at this point. He's just kind of he's struggling to find it. There's also a film made in 1937 based off a book made in 1933,
which was referenced in the last season as well.
Yeah. At the very beginning of this season, I think. Yeah.
I'm sorry. This last half season.
Yes. The premiere of like 701.
Yeah. And then it was Don was watching television. We're seeing this.
Yeah. He's
I have a
watching
take
this movie.
on this. What's yours?
Okay. So the movie is basically about a guy who is going. He's on a last ditch effort to rescue some Westerners, and he heads out to do that from some city in China. And his plane gets hijacked. It runs out of fuel and crashes. And then they are taken to this place called Shangri-La.
Sure.
Which is, you know, an oasis inside this cold, barren area. And over the course of it, they're trying to get out. Several of them want to stay. They find this great place. And I think you can compare, you know, Shangri-La to McCann Erickson for some people. And I think for probably all of them. And they all have different views on how well it's going in Shangri-La. Certainly, you know, Joan and Don are the people who want to leave here. Don could be the main character, who's Robert Conway. He just wants to get out. I don't know. What's your take on it? There are a lot of parallels.
So that's the McCann Erickson as Shangri-La.
Sure.
And that's certainly a valid take. I like the fact that because the other part of that novel, again, I haven't read it, but I've read the synopsis now twice, once last season to try to figure out what the fuck it's talking about, and now this season.
Yeah.
One of the parts is that these people that live in Shangri-La don't age and they're kind of eternally young, but as soon as they leave the valley, they rapidly wither and die. SCP is Shangri-La compared to the horrors, because there's also it was I believe this was set against World War I, wasn't it?
It's
or maybe it was
35, so
it was some war,
World War
but
II-ish.
But you know, Shangri-La is this haven from this terrible, evil outside world.
Yeah,
and you see these people that have thrived at SCP leave the company and they immediately wither. You look at Roger. He's turned into an old man. Look at Joan. She leaves and she's instantly destroyed by the harsh, cruel realities of McCann Erickson. Look at Don. He leaves that and he starts, abandon. I feel like there's a little bit of that too, where SCP is the paradise that they were cast out of, and now.
Yeah, that goes along with Roger's boat analogy.
Yeah.
This is the place where he felt comfortable. This
Yeah.
is the thing that he built, and to see it disappear is a bad thing for him, certainly.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I haven't read the book. I haven't seen the movie, so I'm not sure exactly how that all goes, but I'm sure people will tell us if they see anything else. That's it. Why don't we get to some feedback?
Sure. First up is Michelle T. And first I want to apologize that we are recording a day early. So we're going to be probably light on email, but I'll hopefully make up with a maybe heavier one next week.
Okay.
But anyway, Michelle T said, regarding the Mad Men episode Time in Life, I wanted to weigh in with a little more information about the draw a man test that Tammy Campbell had to do. It's the good enough draw a man test. It was originally conceived as a measure of intelligence, but has also been related to measures of sensory defect, visual motor coordination, neurological dysfunction, personality, and school readiness. The present study conceived of a draw a man as a nonspecific index of psychological functioning rather than as an IQ test, and deficient performance was interpreted as a sign of possible developmental disorder as defined by other means. And she also has a whole lot of other information. I guess now it's not draw a man, it's draw a person, and you're asked to draw a man, woman, and a child. So it's not, it's slightly less sexist. Anyway, she continues, this all makes me wonder, is Tammy growing up with a learning disability and or a mental or physical challenge? It's a sad and fairly dark road for the wiener to go down in terms of any sort of storyline for her, but it'd be totally like him to show something so real that so many families go through. Also, since you and Jim were pontificating on the possibility of a Pete and Trudy reunion, or at least a chance of Pete playing a larger part in Trudy and Tammy's lives, this would be a way to bring them closer to them and bring them closer together as a family. It might also be the thing that forces Pete to man up a little more. What do you think? With 2 episodes to go, could this be something that Pete and Judy bond over?
I don't know who Judy is, but yeah, I viewed it more as, Pete has been an absent father.
Although after last episode,
but I suppose
if we were going to continue with more episodes, I'd like to call Pete Punch and Trudy Judy.
Punch and Judy?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. He gets punched. He throws punches. All of the above.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's possible. Sure. I think that would definitely draw them together a little bit more. I think Pete does care about his daughter. He just he doesn't show it.
I think it's just as likely that they'd drive them for, like, he'd be like, oh,
I want no part of that.
Yeah,
I'm out.
Yeah, he's gonna Don Draper it.
Oof. That's okay. You're not giving Pete any credit, man.
No, I'm not.
None whatsoever.
Gretchen asked, after hearing the email referring to the episode where Don and Roger has talked about contracts, I had a few other thoughts. In season 3, the episode titled 723, Conrad Hilton begins to do business with Don. Hilton's lawyers required that Don have a signed contract with Sterling Cooper. At the end of the episode, when Don still hasn't signed, he meets with Bert, who says, after all, when it comes down to it, who's really signing this contract anyway? Bert Cooper learned the truth about Don's identity from Pete Campbell in the previous episode. Is it possible that Don could terminate his contract with McCann by revealing his true identity? Draper signed a contract, not Dick Whitman. Could this be the death of Draper and the return of Dick? I have no fucking clue how that works out legally.
I feel like Don could terminate his contract at any moment. He just doesn't get his payout.
Sure.
He doesn't get the money.
And he also can't work in advertising for a 4-year period. Because the other thing is, yes, potentially he could get out of the contract, but also now he's committed fraud.
Yes.
Which is a criminal charge.
Not ideal.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is the only problem I see with that theory. But it's
And if he did break his contract, if the white whale got off the hook once again, I think McCann Erickson would go after him.
I agree.
Like if he said, "Hey guys, this is not my real name. I stole this name from some guy in the war."
Sure.
They'd go after him.
I think so. But they're
vindictive.
I also think that Don could do that. And yeah, I mean, something, I don't know, man. Like, you think about how Sopranos ended, and I could just see the Wiener doing something where he ends it on something that the fan base can just argue about forever. Did Don get off scot-free? Did McCann Erickson
fade to black?
Did McCann Erickson, pursue him to the ends of the earth? Like, what exactly happened? What did we just see?
You see his face go like ghost white, and his eyes bulge, and he just follows a figure across the room and then fade to black. You never see that point of view.
Andrew in Kazakhstan said, ever since I started teaching overseas, it's been great to get a taste of home with quality television and your entertaining podcast. Well, thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
I find that while watching, I was unable to do the suckectomy because it would have left a fragment sentence, and I wanted to get the whole, being.
You wanted to feel like Don with the can. Come on.
There you go. I want my heroic Zoom shot. I'm Aaron Hubbard of baldmove.com. I find that watching each episode of Mad Men this season, I thoroughly enjoyed the show, but after watching it and remembering that this is the final season, I judge it much more harshly. My question is, are we viewing these shows differently and perhaps unfairly because we know that this is the final season? I, for example, don't mind seeing Don and others falling into the same holes as they have in previous season. They now know their way out, and it's interesting seeing them realize the traps they constantly set themselves up for. I think we are judging them, though, through the lens of this being the final season and some kind of resolution being required, however, and that doesn't give them a fair shake versus other seasons. How would we see this season differently if we knew that there was going to be yet another one? I know I, for one, would enjoy it more instead of seeing every episode as another hour-long goodbye. That is a question we've struggled a lot with in the last few years of Bald Move, as we said goodbye to many shows. And we've liked some and we've not liked others. What do you think? Do you think some of the bitching and moaning about Mad Men and going in circles is magnified by this being the final season?
Certainly. I mean, if you look at Justified, we were constantly bringing up the question, how are they going to tie this up? Like they've set a path where we don't see the end. It's a scary thing for audiences. Certainly. It's, they never want to see their favorite shows end, myself included. And
the last thing you want is something to happen so cataclysmic that you feel like you wasted X amount of hours of your life watching this television show.
Yeah, or something to even happen so unclimactically that, it just kind of fades away. Like specifically, I'm talking about Mad Men here. Like if we were to just see Don repeat his past mistakes to the bitter end.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, that's fitting to the story of Mad Men, if that's where he wants to take it.
Yeah.
In other ways, that's deeply dissatisfying to an audience.
Sure.
Who wants to see real change and growth from the hero, whatever.
And also, people are attached to the shows. Like, it's the difference between being married for 50 years to someone and they die and you're sad, but you still have all these great memories. And eventually, you're sad that it's over, but you can reflect about all the good times you had versus them leaving you, taking all your money, setting the house on fire, and shooting your dog. That makes everything, all the good times just turn to ash in your mouth. And I think that's the big fear. It's not so much the wasted time, but just like, if this, like, watching Breaking Bad is really, really great because you can relax and like, oh, this is great. And I realize it's great. And now I know it's great to come. And it always is great. And this is a great experience. Whereas if Mad Men's the last 3 episodes turn out to be turds, I feel like going back and watching season 1 is going to be a lesser experience. I don't even know that I would. Like, I haven't gone back and rewatched old X-Files because it was terrible at the end.
Yeah, that's a show that petered out. Man.
You haven't gone back and revisited Lost because the ending was terrible. It does have the capacity to take something you're passionate fan of and kind of ruin it.
It does, yeah. If they don't end a series on a satisfying note on some level, you just I
mean, my God,
it taints the reputation of the whole series.
I've never loved anything like I've loved Star Wars in my whole life, and that got just. I mean, it's not even an ember of the fire it used to burn in my heart, and it's because the last thing I saw was total shit.
Well, I mean, to get a little more to his point, like, yes, I do judge the final season more harshly because I'm looking for the way out.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the exit, saying, how am I going to get over there
Yep.
by the end of this thing? You know?
Yep. And I don't think that for me, I don't think that's
like when I'm at, you know, a play or a symphony or something, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh man, all these people are going to go out to their parking lot at the end of this thing. I got to go over there. So I'm not paying as much attention to what's going on, you know, not enjoying it quite as much as I could be.
Yeah. And to me, I don't think it's as much me worried about where it's going as it being worth the destination. I don't want something so bad that it makes me feel stupid for liking the show.
That would be a shame. Yeah.
Sure.
And I don't see that coming, but
yeah,
you never do.
Tara P said, just want to send you this link again. It's updated through season 7, episode 11. What she's sending me is a Spotify link. And she sent this, I think, the last 2 years. And she's collected every song that's ever appeared on Mad Men in chronological order.
It's cool.
And you can subscribe to it. If you're a Spotify user, it's free. And I will link, it's a big, long, scary URL with a bunch of random letters and characters. But she's done a great curation. I've actually turned this on several times when I want to get into the Mad Men theme. It's kind of good for dinner parties too.
All right,
sure. Just want some jazzy music on the background, some cool music.
Until the fucking Beatles come on with their head in the cloud shit. It's like, whoa, skip.
But yeah, I'm gonna post this link in the show notes that you can get on baldmove.com and probably in your podcast player. Hell, I don't know. But thanks. It's a labor of love you've undertaken there, Tara, and I appreciate your generosity in sharing it with us all. We also had, and I'm not going to mention anybody's names because I don't want to embarrass anybody. I'm not at this point, but we talked about Pete and raping the au pair, and we had a couple people write in and ask us to defend that opinion. So I'm like, you know what? I haven't seen that scene for 5 years. I'm going to go watch. I've got Netflix. I'm going to go watch this episode and see what I really think about it.
What's the verdict?
Well, so let's just talk the facts. The facts are this poor German girl is outside his apartment and she's crying. She's trying to send this dress in a garbage chute because she is a au pair, which I guess is a nanny. She speaks broken English. And she's afraid her family's going to send her home, which would be a bad situation for her because she's borrowed one of the wife's fancy cocktail dresses to go to a party and she spilt wine on it. And Pete says, hey, it's not all that bad. Let me see if I can help you with this. He takes the dress. He comes back later with a new dress he's bought from that store and says, hey, look, I saved the day. And she's very appreciative to him. And she says, thank you. You've really saved the day. And he's like, hey, I thought maybe we could celebrate with a drink. And her face kind of falls and she says, oh, Mr. Peter, I have a boyfriend. And he says, oh, okay, well, good night then. He then goes and starts power drinking on his balcony.
Yep.
Comes back in the middle of the night, knocks on her door. She answers in a robe and he says, hey, I went to a lot of effort to get this dress for you. And least you can do is model it for me. And you can clearly says that she's worried because the kids are asleep and it's late at night. And she says, you can come in, but you got to be very quiet. He then takes her to the bedroom and he kisses her. And this is again after she already turned him down. And then later his neighbor comes and says, yo, my au pair has been crying for the last few days. And it's not a big deal because, you know, everybody has sex with nannies. It's not a big deal. Just stop having sex with mine because it'd really inconvenience me if this girl,
she were to quit.
If it was to quit because she gets along with my wife and it's like, it's like this all buddy thing. And then we see an awkward exchange between when she has to come in with the kids with the elevator and Pete. Did Pete rape the au pair?
Sounds pretty rapey to me. I got to say.
Did he rape her in the legal sense of the word? I don't know. I can't say that. I'm just saying that I feel like this is the type of situation that a dude would get in today. And if she did go to the police and say that he raped her, he would go on to Reddit and say what a bitch she was and how women are evil schemer and it's a false rape report and all this. My opinion is, yes, Pete did rape the au pair. She said she didn't want to have sex with him. He tried to get her drunk. She refused. He came back in the middle of the night knowing, and that's the other thing, is like, just like Joan knew the situation she was in, like, it'd be a shame if anything happened to her accounts. It'd be a shame if your people found out that you ruined their dress. and you had to go home. He had this situation of power, and he used it against her.
Yeah, I mean, with the kids being asleep and everything.
She didn't have to beat on his chest and say, no, 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 for that to be a rape, because she did not give her consent.
Sure. And
she was shattered by the experience.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it was clearly not something she wanted to do.
The interesting thing is this fault line between the people see that and be like, oh, well, that's scummy, but it's not rape. And the people like, no, no, that's rape. And quote unquote, normal people can rape people. That is exactly the fault line that we find ourselves in today in 2015.
Sure.
So, I mean, I can't, like I said, I can't answer that question for you. And I'm not saying that, I'm not going to say you're a rape apologist if you say, oh, that's not a rape or not. I'm just saying, like, think about it and think about the situation Joan's in, and think about if you were in that position, you know, how would you feel? And coercive power dynamics in relationships can be just as brutal and just as psychologically damaging. There's been study after study showing this as a violent, quote unquote, real rape. So that's all I got to say. Yes, I've seen the scenes and it's very uncomfortable. And I am very comfortable saying that Pete Campbell is a rapist.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That is also not the same thing as saying that he is a terrible, atrocious, evil human being. I think the point is there is not. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling. They're not rapists in the sense that they like got facial tattoos and scars and they're creepy individuals.
Okay.
So Pete Campbell can be a rapist and he can also be the guy next door. Boom.
There you go.
Moving on. GNR.
Guns N' Roses?
No.
GNR?
GNR. She wants to defend Don Draper a little bit. She says, I'm tired of hearing about what a horrible person Don Draper is and how he must make amends and change to be quote unquote saved. Yes, he's flawed, but who isn't? He's unequivocally the most admirable character on Mad Men, and the evidence abounds. That may well be. Not a ringing endorsement. To be the best person on Mad Men.
Okay, that's fair, and I also don't know that I agree with that.
All right, well, we'll consider her arguments.
Okay.
1, he never holds a grudge and is never vengeful. The only time he seeks retribution is after Roger invites himself to dinner at Don and Betty's house in season 1, and Roger overtly flirts with Betty. The next day, Don feeds Roger martinis and oysters, then arranges to have him walk several flights of stairs, inducing him to vomit before an important meeting. Don would never flirt with a friend's wife in his presence. No, okay. He will fuck a neighbor's wife behind his back. This is not a super compelling defense of Don Draper.
No, I agree. If I were to pick the best person on Mad Men, it's got to be Ken, right? Ken's the best person. Yeah, he's a little vengeful when he gets the opportunity, but that's well deserved.
Let's continue.
Okay.
He's magnanimous in his divorces with Betty and Megan, going as far as letting Betty's new lover move into his house and take his place, despite the obvious pain this causes him. He writes Megan a check for $1 million, lets her steal all his furniture, and she still pouts. They both spew venom and hatred and blame him for everything, but he never utters an unkind word. They are not victims. They knowingly hitch their wagons to a man who is handsome, a charming alpha male, and the spoils that such a man promises. They choose to ignore the red flags to enjoy the benefits of his income, but we are supposed to see them as these powerless, exploited victims of Don Draper.
I think that's mostly fair categorization.
The only thing I think is like, you can only say that they're spewing venom to him and he is not uttering an unkind word with the context of he systematically lied to them and cheated on them behind their backs. And it's not like he offered them the deal. He didn't go to Megan and be like, hey, if you are my wife, you can have my money and my awesome apartment, and I'm going to sleep with a bunch of people behind your back.
Yeah.
And he didn't go in, certainly didn't go into that
part of the vows.
So it's like, yes, he did that because he felt guilty for doing the things to him for years and years and years that he did, you know?
Sure. And I mean, you know, Megan and Betty can't be blamed for not knowing the kind of person that Don is up front, because Don doesn't ever show that.
Exactly.
Until it's too late.
And that's the thing. Like, that's where
the lying comes in.
I'm not saying Betty and Megan are good people either. I'm just saying that it's not like they just came up with this bile and hatred from nowhere.
Sure.
Point to 3, he never discards a woman he establishes a relationship with. Think about it. They always reject him, usually because of his desperate need to be loved unconditionally, something he has never known. The exception of is Dr. Faye. Also, that secretary he fucked that one time and then felt regret about it. Also, all the other women he's had. You know, it's like,
I mean, I don't know about that.
And yeah, he didn't break up with Megan, but there was a point in time where he consciously checked out of the relationship. I don't think you get points for that.
No, you don't. Especially, I mean, he's the driving force behind those relationships falling apart. I think the women, if Don was who he said he was when he presented himself to them,
especially Megan, what the hell did Megan do to deserve? If I can use such an absurd concept of deserving the betrayal that she got, she did nothing but try to make him happy. Mm-hmm. And her whole sin was that she wasn't
that she wanted to be happy too.
The ideal image that he had for her.
Yeah.
You know, and he wasn't willing to support her change and growth as a person.
But no woman has ever been for Don, right?
Sure.
Don has an idealized woman that doesn't exist. And you know, he's the one bringing down those relationships with his cheating and his neglect and just all sorts of things.
He repeatedly exhibits extreme acts of charity above and beyond other characters. The best example of this is when he gives his job to California to Ted.
Sure, that's a nice thing to do.
And again,
although you got to wonder how much of that was not wanting to be with Megan.
Well, also that was Don realizing his marriage was already destroyed, and this is a man who is kind of on the rocks and is trying not to do the thing that Don just did. Again, yes, Don. I'm not saying Don's not a generous, charitable person, but also he does a lot of charity out of the realization that he's a shit.
Okay, for feeling guilty about the stuff that he has done.
He's humble despite his outward arrogance. In season 5, when they humiliate them with their list of demeaning conditions for his return to the agency, he doesn't blink an eye or plot his revenge. He just accepts it and does his job. This makes him a much better man than most of us are. I don't know. I mean, you give the Hershey speech and you become a pariah in the ad world, then you got to be, you have to be humbled to get back, right?
I guess so. And he was plotting his revenge. He goes in there with Lucky Strike and
sure. Which is the Don we like both.
Take that meeting over. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think Don is the worst character. I don't think he's the best character.
Right. And that's the thing. Like there's this email is like twice as long with a lot more points. But the thing is, Don's not a monster. Mm-hmm. He's not a saint. He's a complicated person that has done a lot of terrible things to people that didn't deserve it. And he's had a lot of terrible things done to him and he didn't deserve it. And it's a fascinating thing to watch. But it's like, you know, it's fine to go to your mattresses and like, you know, just like there's people down to the last dying day that were Walter White supporters. There are those people for Don Draper. Mm-hmm. I like to see the grays. I like to see the complexities.
I do too. And I think it's fitting for him to have nothing at the end of this, you know, if he can understand that. Like, I think that's where he's at now.
And at the very least, you got to say that he has put his own needs and his own selfishness above his children.
Certainly, yeah.
And like, you know, one of her points was no one criticizes Einstein for neglecting his children and wife to do his research. Bullshit. People do all the time, because that was an aspect of Einstein that was kind of terrible.
Okay.
Like, I can't remember if it's Einstein or it's Hawking that had essentially a slave contract with his wife. And you just read this and like, Jesus Christ, what kind of next level spectrum bullshit is this that you think you can have a human being agree to this, but you can be a brilliant theoretical astrophysicist and also kind of terrible as a social human being.
Sure.
That dichotomy, you can be the best sports star in the world and you can punch your wife or you can rape a person in a hotel room in Denver. That happens, man.
Yeah. People are complex.
Let's move on. David G. I enjoyed your discussions in the past few shows about the privilege of attractiveness, particularly as it applies to women. Is there any related reading recommendations you have? I may have missed it if you did during the show. I like to invite our guests. We have thousands and thousands of really smart people, a lot of intelligent women that I'm sure are more well-read than me. If you'd like to send me some articles about that, I will pass them on the next podcast. How about that? Moving on to Michelle S. In episode 10, the forecast, you stated that Roger's comment. I'm sorry, this is Michael S. In episode 10, the forecast, you stated in Roger's comment, you know I could have had you killed for drinking anything but a Coke around here. Had something to do with Don drinking alcohol from what looked like a beer bottle. Although I couldn't make out the label, I believe Don was drinking a soft drink from Coca-Cola, a Coca-Cola competitor. Roger's making a joke based on the fact that Coca-Cola was a client of McCann Erickson.
Okay.
This makes, I think we talked about this off air, but that
yeah,
makes a lot more sense.
Definitely.
Than him still being laboring under the Cutler rules.
Yeah.
In episode 11, Time in Life, you suggested McCann Erickson change their mind as to what to do with SC&P. I proposed that McCann Erickson never had an interest in purchasing SC&P, but did so only as a strategic move to secure their relationship with Buick. If you recall in episode 7, Waterloo, Roger met with Jim Hobart at a restaurant to propose the acquisition of SC&P. Pulling out key parts of that conversation, the following was said: Roger, I just want to know if Buick has left you yet. Jim, why would they do that? Roger, because they built a relationship with GM and our Chevy account man just moved there. Jim, we want the whole Chevy team, you, Don, Jim, and Ted. Roger, I think you should buy the whole company. Jim says, but this is still all about Buick. His hypothesis is Jim Hobart was only interested in one thing, removing a threat of losing Buick as a client. Roger leveraged that knowledge to force Jim Hobart into buying the whole company. Jumping forward several months to present day, the acquisition of SC&P removed the threat of Buick leaving McCann Erickson, so SC&P was no longer needed, and McCann and Erickson dissolved the company. During episode 11, this is actually episode 12, Lost Horizon, McCann Erickson borderline negligent handling of Jones' client list and threatening converted staff like chattel further illustrates the point. Roger thought he was being business savvy when he cut the deal to sell SC&P, but in reality, he was being played by Jim Hobart from the start. I think there's another angle there that Jim wanted Don to collect.
Yeah,
essentially.
I mean, you don't talk about your white whale unless that's a major factor.
But the more you think about this, the more the Waterloo was a debacle. And it was very aptly named. This is what brought down Napoleon. This is what brought down the great SC&P. Mm-hmm. Roger's short-sightedness. I mean, Burt Cooper's alive. Does he make that deal?
Which way would Burt have voted?
I think Burt's strategy was to continue to fight Cutler on even footing and to win the culture war between the company. I don't think he would have thrown a Hail Mary to sell out to McCann Erickson just to keep Don alive, because Burt was pretty much over Don at the end.
He was, but he's loyal. And above all, he's loyal.
Sure.
So yeah, I think if Burt had stayed alive, that deal never gets made, because Roger doesn't need to go find that deal because Don's not in jeopardy. They had the votes until Burt died.
Yeah. Moving on to Adam X 6000. He's wrote a little bit of fan fiction here. This is his perfect end to Mad Men. And this is the final email of the episode. Mm-hmm. At a New Year's Eve party in December 31st, 1970, that Don and all the main cast attend, that Don watches the party in slow motion as he's watching the end of an era. Then comes a countdown of the clock to midnight, 10, 9, 8, 7, etc. Suddenly, an extreme jump cut with the sound of a click from a handheld tape recorder. Around 30 years have gone by. Don and Ken Cosgrove are having a morning breakfast at a restaurant with the tall rectangular windows. Ken says, I think that's all I need. Don says, do you have a name for your book yet? Ken says, I think I will call it Mad Men, Tales of the World of Advertising in its Golden Age, says Ken. Don says, good luck to your book, and they shake hands, and Ken leaves the table. Don looks at his watch. It's 9:11 a.m. At the table, Don accidentally spills his Bloody Mary drink off the table. He looks down at the mess, but only the broken glass is on the floor and no Bloody Mary juice is in sight. Just like the wine glass at the end of the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. Don gets out of the table and walks over to one of the tall glass windows at the restaurant. It's going to be terrible that I'm laughing once you find out what this is. He starts to pull out a cigarette and light it. Immediately, a waitress comes over to him and says, what are you doing? Don says, excuse me? There's no smoke in this restaurant. Don looks perplexed, then says, yes, of course, sorry, pulls out the cigarette. As the waitress walks away, to Don, the waitress seems vaguely familiar. The waitress is the same waitress, Diana, that Don had an affair with 30 years ago. Only unlike Don, she hasn't aged at all. Don stares at the window in a long gaze. The camera's now outside looking at Don from the inside. Only as the camera pulls back do we realize where Don is, at the windows on the World Restaurant at the World Building 1 World Trade Center. Quick fade to black. Title, executive producer, Matthew Weiner. Last song played is Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles. Don's having lunch with Ken the morning of the 9/11 attacks, essentially. I think, is what he's suggesting here.
Okay. That's wild. You know,
The fade to black's pretty ominous in that situation.
it is. It is totally ominous. I'm not sure if that's how it's going to play out, but yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah. Well, you know what? We're a little late.
I can't think of anything better.
Please consider before sending me more fan fiction, because I'm not going to read it every week. But we were a little light this week, so I thought, why not? Let's have fun.
Okay.
Let's have fun commemorating the 9/11 tax through the lens of Mad Men.
Oh yeah, great fun. Great fun.
Oh God, get me out of here, Jim. I'm
That's
just
it,
digging
man.
myself into a hole.
That's it for feedback. That's it for the recap.
We'll have a lot more feedback next week. Madmen at baldmove.com. You can also discuss this with us on the forums at forums.baldmove.com. And follow along our release schedule on facebook.com/baldmove and on Twitter at baldmove, because the second we post the stuff, it goes out to the intertubes through those conduits.
Yeah, I thought it did. Our auto tweeter didn't work for Game of Thrones last
God damn it. What the fuck?
I don't know.
You just
Probably.
made me a liar. Or I guess a malfunctioning plugin made me a liar.
Yeah, it did. Anyway,
integrity is not what it used to be. It can be brought down by an unthinking machine.
It can. Thanks everybody for listening.
Would it help if I cut my nipple off?
Well, it can't hurt.
It
can't hurt.
I think it could.
You maybe.
I think it could.
Anyway, thanks for listening. We will of course be back next week on Tuesday. And until then, I'm Jim.
I'm Aaron. See ya.